Flights out of Kandahar were suspended for a time on Sunday after 2 rockets hit the runway before dawn. The facility is vital to maintaining the logistics and air support needed to keep the Taliban from overrunning the city, their former stronghold. Insurgents have been blamed for a mortar attack that killed several people, including children, elsewhere in Kandahar province on Sunday. The latest violence comes as the Taliban inches closer to overwhelming at least 2 other provincial capitals. Fighting between the Taliban and government forces has been escalating as US and NATO troops complete their withdrawal from the country. Insurgents have seized large tracts of land and captured key border crossings. The Ministry of Defence says hundreds of commandos were sent to the western city of Herat following another day of clashes.
Tonight, an urgent search for suspects in a New York City mass shooting that authorities say was a brazen, coordinated attack. Police releasing this surveillance video from late Saturday showing 2 masked men drawing their weapons, allegedly firing dozens of shots into a crowd outside a laundromat in Queens, hitting 10 people. The video then showing a second pair of men arriving on mopeds who officials say helped the gunman flee.
It looks like a moped was going eastbound.
After they fire at least 37 times that we know of, they calmly get on the back of the scooters and take off. So very brazen, to say the least.
Investigators now asking for the public's help identifying all 4 suspects. They believe the shooting is gang-related and only 3 of the victims were intended targets. The other 7 were collateral damage.
With millions of South Africans dependent on public transport, the government is not taking any chances. Rival taxi associations have been fighting for ownership of a busy route. Confrontations have raged for years. And it's got worse. With more than 80 people killed so far this year, 24 of them in July alone. Among those injured, a 5-month-old baby. Commuters, drivers and bystanders say they are living in fear. Peace talks have so far failed, prompting authorities to close the notorious route for the next 2 months and to make buses available to commuters as an alternative.
Israel has been joined by its key allies in blaming Iran for a deadly tanker attack off Oman. The United States and Britain have thrown support behind investigations into the attack, and this is despite Tehran's denials. Israel accused Iran of a drone attack on the vessel, that is the MT Mercer Street, last week in the Arabian Sea, which killed a British security guard and a Romanian crew member, while also stressing on the need for international action against Iran. The tanker was managed by the prominent Israeli billionaire Eyal Ofer. And according to reports now, several unmanned Iranian drones appear to have carried out the attack, which was the 5th attack against a ship that was connected to Israel since February. The tanker's London base operator said that a Romanian national also died in the attack.
We now turn to some breaking news from Myanmar, where the country's military leader Min Aung Hlaing has repeated his pledge to hold fresh multi-party elections within 2 years. In the lengthy televised address, the senior general promised military authorities would ensure the state of emergency currently in place would end by August 2023. The country was plunged into political and civic turmoil on February the 1st when troops moved against and detained the elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi.
Israel's Supreme Court may rule today on whether Palestinian families can be evicted from their homes in the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah in East Jerusalem. It's the final hearing in a case that has dragged on for decades and which sparked protests and a new war with Hamas earlier this year.
Israeli settlers claim the land belongs to them, and a lower court in Israel ruled in their favor. As a last legal resort, the Palestinian families filed an appeal with the Israeli Supreme Court. Settlers have already taken over this house and others, waging a lengthy battle through Israeli courts. Chaim Silberstein says the land belonged to Jewish owners in the 19th century. He wants to re-establish a Jewish neighborhood here.
And there were dozens of Jewish families that lived here until 1948.
An Olympic athlete from Belarus who refused to fly home over fears for her safety has entered the Polish embassy in Tokyo, where she's understood to be seeking asylum. Kristina Tsimanouskaya said she was taken to Tokyo's main airport against her will after being thrown off the Belarus team. She had criticized her coaches. Belarusian officials blamed what they called her emotional and psychological condition for that decision. The sprinter was due to compete in the 200 meters on Monday. The Slovenian and Czech governments have also offered humanitarian visas for the athlete.
Her inclusion in the Games has stirred up a hot debate. For her part, though, weightlifter Laurel Hubbard is just grateful to the IOC for its commitment to making sport inclusive and accessible, allowing her to become the first transgender woman to compete in the Olympics. Hubbard will compete in the women's 87-kilogram plus category, where she's ranked 16th in the world. The 43-year-old transitioned to female in her 30s, qualifying for the Olympics after meeting IOC rules, namely that transgender women's testosterone levels are below 10 nanomoles per litre. Critics question the fairness of allowing her to compete against women, arguing that she retains physical advantages over female-born athletes, such as bone and muscle density, because of her formative years as a male.